and welcome to SteamLUG Cast Season 2, Episode 15. My name is Cheese, and today we're recording this on the 25th of July. With me, I have Dorita.
Hello.
John Drinkwater.
Hey, everyone.
And special guest Edwin Smith from Fera Interactive.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. How has everyone been over the past 2 weeks?
Busy.
I sure hope so.
It's been very nice, very sweaty, but lovely.
So before we dive in, we might just have a quick look at what we've been playing over the past couple of weeks. John, what have you been up to?
The International sort of ended, so a load of Dota 2, mostly watching it while I've been doing other bits and bobs. I attended so few events that the only notable game I played out of that was Skulls of the Shogun. And then I had a friend over at the start of the week, so I showed him XCOM and just, he's a PS3 gamer with me, so I was just showing him that look what PCs can do nowadays. And Line that I keep talking about. I love that game. So, and you, Dorita?
I've also been playing Dota 2, watching a lot of the International, which has kind of killed my gaming time for the last 2 weeks a bit. I have delved into Neo Scavenger again, which is the early access game that keeps on giving. That's early access done perfectly. I have played Half-Life Blue Shift, and after playing that, I just wanted to play the mod The Sheep again, which kind of is the same thing, but by modders, but you can't get it to run under Linux. It has its own client DLLs, and you would have to have client SOs. So, yeah. Jeez, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a bit of Guns of Icarus Online, bit of Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is coming out in a couple of days. It's really exciting. Some TF2, Civilization 5, been testing Hand of Fate, and of course playing some XCOM. Been testing The Fall, testing pre-release version of The Maker's Eden, which we'll mention a bit later on. And I've had the pleasure of testing pre-release version of The Journey Down Chapter 2. And another unannounced title that nobody will ever be able to get me to shut up about when it's released. Which is always a good thing, Yes, you saw nothing. Edwin, what about yourself? What have you been playing?
I've been obviously playing a little bit of XCOM because we've been testing the soon-to-be-released Linux patch. At home, I play a lot of Football Manager. It was one of the first games I got sucked into, and that's actually now on Linux as well, so it's quite cool. I can move my save games across. And I've been playing a fair bit of Shogun 2, which is the next game we're coming out for Mac. It isn't coming out for Linux. Yeah, pretty much when you play games for a living, you kind of try and play games which are completely different from the ones you're playing at work to sort of change things up. So a little bit of Half-Life as well. I finally bought the pack of all of the different Half-Lives. It was on a deal during the Steam Summer Sale. So that was quite fun to play something which sort of we hadn't worked on. A little bit of Lego games as well. Sort of I don't know, half an hour of everything once a week tends to be my week.
Oh, those Lego games, such fun family affairs.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the franchise sort of going downhill a lot. I really enjoyed the classic Star Wars trilogy, and I enjoyed the first Indiana Jones one, but I just kind of felt like most of the things that I appreciated started to disappear from the games as, more and more titles got added to the, I don't know, is it a genre? Do you want to call it a genre?
I would probably try Lego Marvel Superheroes. That was a real high point for me. Them and the Batman games were kind of where it started, I think, coming up again. And some of my favourite games was the Lego Marvel one. It was just absolutely huge, and it was lots of fun. It's also one of the games me and my wife have played, so that's good.
Yeah, my partner and I, we play Batman, but I find it really hard to discern everything's too dark and it's too easy to lose things. Part of that might just be that we're running on fairly low res display. For that, you're hooked up to a projector, but yeah, I don't really enjoy Lego Batman as much as I do the Lego Star Wars.
Heard very good things about the Lord of the Rings adaptations, so
Yeah, I haven't played those, but yeah, I would love to see those on Linux.
Request noted.
Sweet. So moving on, we'll focus now on having a quick chat with Edwin directly before moving on to our usual show content. To start with, could you give us a bit of an overview of who Feral are and what sort of stuff you guys do?
Sure. So, Feral's history, we come from sort of Mac development. So we started out, we've probably got well over a decade of back catalogue of games which we brought from Windows to Mac. So a lot of the things we used to do was basically there were loads of really awesome games on Windows, and we were just like, how come we can't play them on the Mac? So we started off porting sort of 1 or 2 games, and we've slowly every year started porting more and more. It came to the point recently where Linux was getting a higher and higher profile. Valve announced SteamOS, and we were just like, well, hey, OS 10 is a Unix, Linux is a Unix, both use OpenGL. We've got a lot of experience in here. Let's have a go at doing Linux games as well. So yeah, we've always been a games company that sort of brings the really high-end games across to new platforms, and we're really quite excited to be on 2 platforms now with both Linux and OS 10.
And do you feel like having presence on both those platforms, like do you feel like the experiences that you've had developing for Linux are giving you benefit on the Mac side as well in any way?
I would say yes, and it's probably indirect. If you're targeting 2 platforms, especially when they are both similar and different at the same time, it allows you to, things you learn on one platform can sometimes assist you on another platform. So, for example, if we had a frame rate drop while developing on Linux for XCOM, and we didn't have that drop in on the Mac, we knew that we were both targeting OpenGL, we had the same code running, so we could then suddenly find a quicker way of doing it for Linux based on our Mac experience, and then vice versa. When we were developing the Linux version, we probably made a few little changes that will go back in and will benefit not just Mac XCOM, but Mac Shogun, which is coming out soon, or maybe the next Linux title that comes out. So yeah, I think having 2 platforms, it is more work, but equally you have a hell of a lot more opportunities to learn and optimize and sort of have a look at sort of the little nooks and crannies, because you're having to target 2 different ways of doing the same thing.
Now, you talked about the similarities between, or you suggested there were similarities between Linux and macOS. Did you feel that that met your expectations in hindsight? I mean, because from the way I look at it, the Macintosh environment is much more controlled by Apple. You don't usually have drivers being installed by users and so forth, so you can be a little bit certain that if somebody's running a particular version of macOS on a particular machine, that they're going to have a particular version of this peripheral software as well.
Yeah, taking a little while to answer this one because it's sort of a little bit complex, but this is why when we first released XCOM, this being our first Linux game, we were a little bit, let's say, conservative on what OSs we decided to target. So we shipped with Ubuntu 14.04 64-bit support, which is the latest version of long-term Ubuntu, and on SteamOS. And that allowed us to very closely test absolutely everything we could on that one distro. And we full well knew that if that distro was very stable, most of the other distros would probably be okay. And we were listening out to see what the community said. And even though, let's say, we don't support Arc64 and all of these other variations, what we did know is if we get it working on a one core system and make sure that's beautifully polished and works great, we can then listen to all of the feedback from people. And even if we don't, let's say, support stuff, we can have a look at where the problems are and start cleaning stuff up. So even if you're playing on a non-standard distro, the game should work as long as you put all the libraries in the right place. And that's one of the little things which this XCOM patch does, is it's cleaned up a bunch of little tiny things, some of them not directly related to Ubuntu. So for example, some people are running through some sophisticated VPN setups which XCOM didn't quite like originally. So we've gone and tweaked and cleaned these different things up. So yeah, I mean, the difference between Mac and Linux is you know, you can compile your own kernel. On the Mac you can't. But that's why what we tried to do when we first shipped on Linux was to have a slightly tighter specification that we knew would run everything perfectly, and then we'd listen to the Linux community and see how all the other distros work. And by and large, once people install all the correct libraries, it seems to have gone down very well.
How has the Steam runtime helped in that? Was it solid enough to comfortably point at it and say, yeah, pretty much everything that's in there will mostly help all other distros as well? Or does XCOM rely on a lot of libraries that are not in the Steam runtime?
We primarily went under the assumption that people would have the libraries that are inside the Steam runtime. So we deliberately didn't try and target anything that you would have to manually install over and above installing the Steam runtime and client environment.
So, speaking of feedback, what type of impression have you got from the answers that the community have given? Are you happy with the port you've made?
I think that answer's probably slightly better answered from the whether or not the Linux community are happy. I mean, the feedback we've been having from people has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, one thing I would like to we'd all like to put on record from the development team and the QA team and everybody at Feral is the feedback we've had from the Linux people has been absolutely fantastic. We actually had somebody who was playing on a completely unsupported distro using the open source graphics drivers, which we don't currently support, and he worked out why the drivers were crashing, gave us an exact dump, told us exactly where the array is, what to do, so we could easily just put it all together. We made a very small little change to XCOM, which is coming in the patch, and that should help the Mesa guys fix up the rest of the AMD drivers. So yeah, we really loved the feedback and information from the Linux community, and by and large they seem to be quite happy with XCOM, and we're really pleased with how it's gone. Overall, we've had nothing but sort of really nice and friendly comments, and even when someone's having a problem, they've always been very proactive to try and help us fix it, and very understanding that sometimes these little things can happen and we need to track them down. So yeah, overall we're really glad to be a member of the Linux community now.
Do you find that this level of vocality is different from what you'd get from Mac users normally?
That's sort of hard, but talking in very general terms, I have noticed a difference between your average Windows gamer, your average Mac gamer, and your average Linux gamer. One thing which I've noticed more about the Linux guys is because Linux is a lot more of a hands-on OS, most people get a little bit down and dirty in the terminal from time to time. It does mean that they tend to be a little bit more sort of knowledgeable, and also with Linux gaming just really starting to kick off in terms of the higher profile games, that they've been immensely keen to try and help us make XCOM better and giving us hints about what we could do for our next game. So yeah, I think sort of it's Linux users now remind me a little bit of Mac users a few years ago, but I find Mac users tend to be a little less technical than Linux users. They tend to still try and help, but some of the Linux players we have, programmers and people like that, so they can give you a lot more detailed help if they have a problem. So I would say Linux people can sort of solve their own problems a lot quicker, and when they solve their own problems they tend to tell us about it, which is really great, because we've actually built up like a list of information which Linux people send in to us of, oh, I was playing on this unsupported architecture, but this is how I made it work. And we've been noting all of those things down, and if someone emails us going, I'm trying to play on this unsupported hardware, what do I do? We have a quick flick through and we go, oh, some other user came up with this entire instruction on how to fix it. So that was one of the differences between Mac and Linux users. Is I think Linux people are just that little bit more technical than Mac users, because you have to be for Linux, and we're just taking advantage of that and trying to sort of take from the community and then give it back to other people who need the help, sort of be a repository for the information on how to get XCOM running on, let's say, unsupported machines and things like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'd kind of say that maybe rather than being something that's innately a part of a Linux experience is that kind of deeper technical knowledge. I'd say rather than that maybe it's more that people who want that kind of experience where they can recompile their own kernel or they can dig through the source code and do their own stuff and can have those kind of insights will gravitate towards a system where that's possible.
I'd broadly agree with that. I mean, I always loved working on the Mac when I first started moving games across for Feral, was because I had a little bit of a taste of being able to run Unix and all of my open source software, but also have sort of a commercial grade UI and stuff like Microsoft Word for work and everything. So I can completely see where if you want a little bit more control, Linux is just like the perfect environment for you. Yeah, all we're trying to do at Feral is sort of we just take advantage of the overall sort of happiness of the Linux community and try and sort of give back as much as we can by basically taking information from one people and passing it on to the other, as I've said.
So what does your test environment look like? I kind of feel like some of the questionable Linux releases we've had have mostly been the result of poor testing and problems not being identified before launch. Is that something that you've been concerned about, or is that something that you've put specific effort into to trying to make sure that you're aware of?
Yeah, I think actually in the next week or so I'm going to try and get the time phone. I took a time lapse of us building our 4 main Linux test lab machines, so you can actually see all of the different hardware which we put inside them. But yeah, I mean, what we did was we went out and we basically had a look at primarily what kind of hardware would ship on SteamOS, what kind of hardware is supported by the latest Linux drivers and things like that. And then we basically went and tried to create a subsection of different cards. So we had a bunch of Intel hardware, a bunch of AMD hardware, a bunch of NVIDIA hardware with different levels of CPU and RAM. And then try to split everything up and then try to be a little bit clever about it. So what you do is you make sure that you test at least one model from all the different ranges. So if you know that, let's say, 2 sets of ranges use exactly the same driver and hardware paths, then you don't need to be testing multiple ones of those. So, am I back?
You're back, yeah. We lost the last sentence, I think.
Okay, I mean, basically all I was saying is that what you have to do is you have to be smart about it, because Linux has got so many different bits of hardware, there's no way we can test everything. So what we did was break it down to what are the most popular cards and what are the most popular combinations, and then you basically do a little bit of more or less like set maths to work out if we can only have, let's say, 6 different versions of hardware in test at any one time, which are the best 6 to be testing at any one time. So that's another reason why, let's say, we stuck with just Ubuntu 14.04 as the supported distro, was because if we did that allowed us a little bit more scope to make sure that all of the different cards and everything else worked. So it's if you restrict yourself in one area, you can give yourself a little bit more room in another, which allows you to sort of give the best overall solution.
So do you also, when it comes to reproducing stuff, do you then go back to your lab and shake up the hardware and software combinations that you're using? Post-release, of course.
I would say as new hardware comes out, it slowly grows. So it's hard to say for Linux because we've just started, but for example, on the Mac, when a whole new range of iMacs come out, we make sure we have at least one of all the different cards and various submodels so that we can test against anything we need to. So it's a little bit the same on Linux. When the next set of AMD graphics cards or NVIDIA graphics cards or Intel integrated, Iris Pro 2 or whatever is going to come next, when it comes out, we'll make sure that we've got that kind of hardware in our labs. And one of the things we do whenever we get new hardware is just quickly flush through all of our already shipping titles. So yeah, with XCOM, as we get new test machines, one of the things we'll do is just quickly fire up XCOM and check that everything's fine.
Yeah, that sort of testing culture I think is really important. Not just for porting studios, but for all developers. Having that kind of attitude, and it seems like it's something that's not that common at the moment on any platform.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak sort of for Feral, and I know sort of myself and the managing director, and the Feral ethos has always been sort of we're gamers who make games. So because of that, we've always wanted to. We've been on the other side of buying a game, and it didn't quite live up to what you expected when you picked up the box. I mean, I know you don't buy boxes anymore, but it was that kind of feeling. You opened it up and you put it in, and then it just didn't feel quite polished. So because of that, we always want to make sure that like we do justice to the game that we've licensed. So we wanted to make sure that like when 2K see XCOM on Linux, they'll be like, "Wow, that's brilliant." They were just, there's nothing they could say about it. They were like, "That's a perfect port." So trying to always aim for that high standard, even if you slightly miss, that's okay as long as you learn from it. But you should always sort of aim to be the best at absolutely everything. So, for example, making sure your icon's high def is one of the things I always. It's a small thing. It sounds silly, but I've always wanted to make sure that the icon is the highest resolution and the sharpest and the nicest done as possible. Even if the original icon was, let's say, 16-bit back when we first started doing Mac ports. So it's the same with Linux. It's just making sure that sort of absolutely all of the little tiny things which you might not notice the first time, those are the things which I really think makes someone kind of trust you as a games publisher and sort of want to come back. So one of the things we wanted to do, make sure we did with XCOM, was all of the Linux people who played XCOM would be like, "That was a really well done port. I wonder what Feral are going to do next." And that way you kind of build up goodwill so that people sort of start to trust you. And if they start to trust you, then sort of they'll buy more games. We'll get to make more games, sort of, so everybody wins.
Absolutely. You briefly mentioned there about licensees and the rest. As you go forwards, how do you tackle the subject of you look at your previously ported titles. Do you approach your licensees to update them onto new platforms, or do they approach you to do it? I mean, how does that work?
This is starting to get into sort of negotiating stuff. But giving a very high-level overview, it's a little bit of both. I think sort of we've built up a lot of goodwill with all of the publishers we worked with, making sure that sort of our Mac ports are sort of a really good high quality so that they trust us. So I think as Linux gaming goes from hopefully from strength to strength, then it makes it easier for people to say, instead of just doing the Mac version, would you like to do the Linux version as well? So hopefully sort of going forward throughout this year and next year and the years coming, talking about a Linux version alongside the Mac won't be something like, oh, the Linux version as well. It'll just be, it's coming with Mac and Linux. So we'll see how it goes, but sort of there is no one way it works. It depends on the game, the publisher, when it was licensed, lots of things like that.
And do you find that, or do you feel that demand from Linux users is likely to influence what you're chasing at this point for future Linux titles?
Yes, I think it will, just like how it affects the Mac in the same way. How it affects it, that's, I tend to work on the production side of things, so I wouldn't know exactly all the different formulaic stuff behind it. But sort of my gut feel is the Linux and Mac communities tend to spend a little bit more time on the more XCOM sort of civilization kind of games, which are a lot more less instant action, a little bit more sort of not thought behind it, but sort of strategy games and that kind of thing. So I think that would be my personal guess, but I think sort of as Linux gets bigger and SteamOS hopefully becomes popular, then I think all genres will come to Linux.
And I think a lot of it has to do with willingness on the client side of things as well. Like, if you've got partners that aren't that interested in Linux, then there's a lot of effort you can put in for not much gain there. But if you've got partners who are keen, then that's more likely to happen, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think, as with all these things, is success breeds more games. So how we grew on the Mac was we licensed more games and ported them well, and more people bought them, and we ported more games. So fingers crossed, the same thing will happen on the Linux community.
Yeah, cool. And what level of value do you think there is for external porting houses to interact with upstream developers? Is that something that you guys do very much, or is that something that you don't feel is necessary for the sort of work that you do?
I don't 100% get exactly what you're meaning by that, but one thing which I think I will point out is Feral are both the publisher and the developer. So there are certain companies who will, let's say, port a game, sort of work for hire, and then the original publisher will release it. Whereas what we do at Feral is we're the developers and the publishers. So XCOM Linux and XCOM Mac are developed and published on those platforms under license from 2K, but they're published by Feral. So that way, it's a little bit different from, let's say, just being paid to port the game and then it's then controlled by the original publisher. The real difference this can sometimes make is that, say, because we publish it, it makes it easier for us to commit to patching and maintaining and looking after the title in the years down the line.
Sure. I was meaning more along the lines of, say, with XCOM, for example. Did you interact with the Firaxis developers at all?
It depends on the game, but on the whole, the Firaxis guys or the original developers tend to be very busy people working on either updates to the game we're working on, or they're working on another game. So we try and be very self-sufficient in terms of those kind of things. So we have our own team, and we've been doing it for sort of 10 years now. So we have a healthy relationship with those guys, and if we need any help, we can ask for it. But on the whole, we just get on with trying to make the Linux and Mac versions, and we use them as a resource if we get stuck, or if, let's say, we want to make sure that cross-platform networking works well, things like that.
How do you go about handling support requests, both for platform-specific stuff and for things that are platform-independent, which are likely to affect the original versions of the game as well?
For platform-specific stuff, we've got our own internal support team, who are actually, everybody on our support team is either our head of support has actually got 10 years in testing before he runs our support. So everybody there has got a fairly good technical background, and the support issues tend to get either passed on when they get pushed up. They either get pushed up to the devs who actually worked on the original title, or the test leads who worked on it, or sometimes myself if it's quite far back. So we try and make sure that support is an integral part of releasing a game. So the end of a game isn't when we release it. You've got to keep on actively supporting it going forward, because we've got some games that have had patches and we still support, and they've been released about 8 or 9 years ago, and we still actively support them if there's issues. And that not only does it mean that people will keep on buying the game, but it also means that sort of you start getting a little bit of a loyalty from people who've bought your game, because they know that it will keep working. So I think it's worth making sure that your support is an integral part of everything. In terms of cross-platform bugs, they tend to be pretty rare. And one thing we do is, when the original developers patch the game, we make sure that all those patches and updates get pushed into the Mac and Linux versions. So, for example, XCOM had was it a day 90 patch, or was it 120 days? I can't remember. They added a patch relatively recently, about 4 or 5 months ago. So we made sure that the Linux version had all of those changes merged in. So the Linux version shipped with all 3 or 4 XCOM patches already included. The Mac version was updated to the latest patch. So we do it in 2 ways. We make sure that we constantly maintain our platform version to make sure we don't have any platform bugs, and we also make sure that we merge in any changes that the original developers do, so that our versions always have all the fixes of the original game.
Awesome.
What kind of things has your very first Linux port taught you about porting to Linux specifically and supporting it? What were the standout issues and little things you've picked up?
The things we kind of picked up on and had to make decisions on early on, I would say, would be pre-installed libraries and the sort of thorny issues of architecture and what to target. So when you first look at Linux, especially coming from sort of a Mac background, Macs are a little bit like similar in a way to consoles in terms of you generally know what the hardware is going to be. So Linux is kind of the opposite. You don't know what anything's going to be. It could be a manually compiled OS like Arch, or it could be Ubuntu just downloaded on a USB stick. It could be all these different types of hardware put together in loads of different ways. So one of the things we learned and spent some time on early on was learning and working out how do you strip that down into a controllable initial target. So it was looking through all the different types of distros, picking one and saying, okay, if this one works, then most of these other ones will. So we'll pick that one and we'll only test against that. So it was just those kind of things, and also we learned a few things about drivers and different versions of libraries, because often these libraries get updated quite often. So we learned actually post-release as well that you can get loads of really obscure, weird bugs which don't happen because of XCOM. They don't happen because of the OS, but they happen because of a different library which was installed into the OS. So, for example, under-spec older NVIDIA cards have a bug at the end of the first level which causes a crash, but this crash can only happen if you have specific versions of the NVIDIA driver, and if you upgrade, they go away. So it was those kind of things which I think we learned quite a lot about. We kind of knew what was going to happen, but it was quite invaluable seeing how people reacted and what OSs and distros are actually popular as well. Those are the things that I think we've learned the most. The rest of it, because we've already working on a Unix-based OS, I'd say we had a much smaller leap than, let's say, a Windows developer would have.
And specific things like case-sensitive file systems and X11, which you haven't seen on the Mac in ages, like seeing an old friend again, a friend you didn't miss very much.
Yeah, I don't know how much I missed X11. But yeah, it's case sensitivity. We'd already touched upon that a little bit on the Mac before. On a few games, we'd had a go at trying to support case-sensitive file systems, because although the Mac by default doesn't install with a case-sensitive file system, you can run it off of case-sensitive file system if you wish. Apple's file system is called HFS Plus. HFS Plus can be run in case-sensitive mode. So because of that, we'd already touched upon that a little bit. It is a little bit tricky just because all of the other platforms aren't case sensitive, so you can end up with some interesting things like, even if you lowercase the game data, which is what we did for XCOM, inside the actual game source code you might have uppercase or lowercase spellings where someone's misspelt the file path name. Now that doesn't make a difference on Windows or on standard Mac, but as soon as you go case sensitive, it will make a difference. XCOM was pretty much straight up, it just worked. But I can see sort of some games which have got thousands of little files in the data folder. That could be a little bit more interesting.
You've spoken about post-release updates. We had a few questions from the community. Do you have any information to relay about future updates?
Yes, I do. I had been hoping to be able to say the patch is now live today, but we talking of case sensitivity, we found a case sensitivity issue with a file which somehow went uppercase again. We should be releasing a patch hopefully early next week if everything goes fine, which has a whole bunch of small fixes and tweaks. So a few which I've noticed in the chat menu, scrolling past and sent in, was some people can sometimes get the option to play enemy within when they don't have it. We fixed that. We fixed installing into file paths which have spaces and other strange characters. We've made a couple of changes to how we render stuff, which should help the FOSS guys make the FOSS drivers a little bit more stable. We've improved the decode speed on some of the videos. I know some people, especially with 2-core machines, were having slowdowns and frame rate drops, so we've improved that. We've enabled more performance across the board, but specifically with NVIDIA cards, we found a way of caching some shaders. So the first time you ever get in the 3D mode, so when you make a special move, you'll suddenly see people running in sort of over the shoulder look, and you could sometimes get a stall. This was because of on-the-fly shader generation, which isn't as fast on Linux as it is on Windows. So we found a way of caching the shader, so you might get a stall the first time you ever do that or throw a grenade, but after that it'll cache it on your system and you'll never see that stall again. So it should just make things smoother. So overall, we now, on a couple of our test machines, we're pretty much the same as Windows in Enemy Within on NVIDIA cards. Depends on what drivers and what distros you've got set up, but overall everybody should notice a boost. And on some machines which had, let's say, a video dropout and stuff, it should turn it from being sort of really good to hopefully sort of perfect. We also fixed a couple of VSync issues, again with certain drivers. VSync didn't turn on. It's lots of little things. There isn't any one major thing. It's just going back to polish. We've just tried to put as many of these little fixes in. OpenVPN now is fully supported and works. I think that's probably everything. And as I said, we're hoping to get that out next week live. If you are suffering from any of these issues, feel free to drop us a support email. It's steamsupport@feralinteractive.com, and one of our support guys can actually maybe give you early access to the beta, and you can check and then let us know that the beta fixes your problems. Sorry, that was a bit wordy.
No, that's fine.
That's okay. We're all laughing because we're editing the doc at the same time.
Yeah. I can say I've had a bit of just judder when it pops to that 3D mode, so that'll please me.
I've got a slightly below spec machine, so I'm looking forward to performance increases as well.
One of these things is it just goes back to the question you asked earlier about what have we learnt about Linux while developing on it, and this is just part of that. Is we didn't stop development when the game shipped. We listened out to see what all these different people were playing and what performance they were getting, and then sort of nailed in on real life examples of where people got frame drop and just tried to bump it up a little bit. So I think this next XCOM patch will probably be the last one for a while, because we think we've pretty much should have fixed all of the little tiny requests which we've had from different people.
I kind of want to bring up the mic thing, but it feels very off topic.
Don't.
Yeah. So as far as the future goes, do you think that, as far as Linux stuff goes, do you think that we're likely to see things that's already within your Feral's Mac catalog, or do you think we're likely to see stuff from outside as well?
This is one thing I asked our MD of what I can say, and yeah, I'd say for the rest of the year, we've definitely got a couple of irons in the fire, and I don't think you'll guess what at least a few of them are, because we haven't told anyone yet. So I would say it'll probably be a mixture of both, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to telling you guys about it, because a couple of them I've literally been sat in the office for the last couple of weeks, not specifically on Linux, but knowing what we've got planned for the rest of the year with this coming up, and just going, I'm not allowed to spill the beans early. I've been under strict instructions not to. But yeah, as soon as we're allowed to say anything, we'll definitely let all you guys know, because one, we'll probably want to ask a few of you really keen Linux gamers to help us out with some early testing. We did that with XCOM. We had a couple of people test before it was released on the quiet. So yeah, as soon as we've got any official news, we'll let you guys know. But
Awesome.
yeah, I wouldn't expect it just to be back catalog stuff. You should also expect some new games coming out.
That's awesome, dear.
If you feel comfortable, if you had the magical ability to license any title for porting or get the rights to port and publish any title, what sort of titles do you think you'd go after?
If I told you that, everybody else will go and steal them. The one thing I can say is we do. I spend you might have noticed, but I do spend a lot of time on forums and stuff outside of work. So I listen on all the different Steam places. I try and drop in on gaming on Linux and stuff, and just listen to what people talk about and what kind of games they find interesting. And I've got my own personal favorites. I saw Escape Velocity float past. Yeah, I mean, I think I own every copy of Escape Velocity.
Awesome. I used to live with one of the guys, or two of the guys that worked on Nova.
Yeah, I helped test Nova as a student a long time ago. So yeah,
nice.
So I mean, that's what we tend to do. Is I wouldn't say what I would pick, but I would definitely say sort of listening in. You know, we've had loads of people asking about different genres of games. So what we tend to do is we grab the games we like, and you kind of put them together, and then the obvious choices pop out. So, for example, it was loads of fun doing the Total War series on the Mac. That was like just loads of fun. And like when we found out we were doing XCOM for the first time, it was just like one of those, hey, we're going to get to like go to work and work on XCOM. It's one of those when you walk in on a Monday morning, it's actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
Awesome.
One of our regular hosts isn't here, Swordfisher, but he certainly would like to say a first-person shooter would be very welcome.
And I would join him.
Yeah.
And you know, I kind of, for the people that I know, I would say that there's just an even spread of a demand for genres as there is on any other platform. I wouldn't say that I've noticed any specific tendency towards strategy or more cerebral titles. It just kind of seems like Linux gamers are gamers.
That's interesting. I haven't spent enough time in the Linux community. I'm a bit of a, I suppose the term would be noob for the Linux community. I'm far from a Unix noob, but in terms of Linux, I nailed my flag to the OS 10 mast a decade ago. So ever since then, I kind of dabble in different Linux distros, but I always tend to head home to OS 10. That's changing a little bit now because I've got a Linux box permanently on my desk. Obviously, 1404 with Unity, if anyone's interested. Apart from that, I've noticed a couple of questions. The Deus Ex engine wasn't Unreal, just to clean that up. The original Deus Ex was, but the Deus Ex Director's Cut, which we did a couple of years ago, wasn't.
So we haven't mentioned, at least not directly. I mean, you said you've got a Linux machine on your desk, but you guys decided to move your development environments to Linux to do this port. What kind of an experience was that?
Wasn't too much of a big deal. I mean, I suppose we've got an advantage as, we spent a decade moving games from one platform to another, and the second platform was Unix with OpenGL, using till very recently GCC. So moving to Linux was kind of a smaller leap than sort of, oh my goodness, start again. So it was quite different from, let's say, how a lot of those other people talk about moving games to Steam for the first time, and it's convert your game on Windows to do this, then do that, and change this stuff. We already had solved a lot of those problems moving from Windows to Mac, so it was a little bit more extending what we already knew to support Linux, which by and large is kind of I would say OS 10 and Linux distros are kind of like cousins. They're quite close. There are some intrinsic differences, but a large part of the how you do everything is similar.
Can you see them drifting apart slightly with the Clang GCC split at all, or is that just likely to make your games more robust?
Well, PlayStation 4 uses Clang, so I don't think I'd see it move too much. I mean, Clang is fairly open, so you never know. You might be able to just compile for Clang on Linux in a few years' time. They might flip that way. But no, I don't think it shouldn't make too much of a difference. There are definitely things you need to do in terms of certain code doesn't like certain compilers, but it tends to always be that the Windows compiler will compile absolutely anything you throw at it, it'll compile it. Whereas GCC and Clang are a little bit more strict. But if you've got to fix the code to be strict for one, it tends to fix most of the things which need to be strict for the other. So yeah, it doesn't just work, but the work you have to do to get something to be compliant for GCC pretty much is the same kind of thing you need to do to make it compliant for Clang, because they're both a lot stricter, following the official sort of ANSI-C and all those kind of things. So by making it stick to the rules, it tends to compile better, and you end up with better code.
Ultimately, that's better for everyone.
Yep, it is.
Nice redundant comment there. Sorry.
Right, so what else did we want to talk about?
I don't know. Actually, I am going to ask about the mic thing. Have you had, because XCOM is one of the... I'm only aware of 2 titles that have this feature, let's call it a feature, where the game constantly transmits mic audio without being able to turn it off. And so this is a new thing for Linux users to have to deal with. Have you had any feedback from Linux users regarding multiplayer XCOM doing this?
No, we haven't had any at all.
Oh, well.
I can't think of even one email in. I mean, I could have missed it because I've got a lot on, to be perfectly honest. So I don't check all of the support emails, but normally if something major pops up, it tends to get pushed through just over my desk at some point. So I haven't heard anything of that. I was sure there was a shortcut toggle, I could be wrong, which can force that off.
If there is, I think we'd love to hear about it, because when we've run events and when we've played games in here, we talk in mumble and then we get it echoing 3 or 4 seconds later back in the game.
Sure, we can do that.
But it's kind of interesting, because from what I understand, this sort of thing is more common on Linux. Yeah, I've seen a few people just being grumpy about it, but obviously not enough to send in an email. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say to everybody listening, if you have feedback on things like this, let us know. We really are quite keen to listen to sort of feedback from everybody, and if it's something that sort of there's a bug or something like that, we can see what we can do. But if you don't let us know, then we don't know. So if we don't know about it, we can't look into it, basically.
And of course, I meant it's common on Windows, from what I understand. Just saying the wrong platforms there. Whoops. So, is there anything that that you'd like to ask of the community? Like you say, if people don't tell you stuff, you don't know about it. But is there anything in particular that you'd be keen to know about that maybe we can answer here for you?
Not massively, because I would say the community's all been sort of really helpful and vocal. There are a few little things I thought I might reiterate or get some feedback which you can send to us. Is just if there's these little things which you normally think, there's no point in sending an email in, everything's pretty much fine with this game. Overall I love it. But there's that one little thing. Don't just go, well, tell us about it, and then we can do something. Or even if we can't do something, we know about it. And if we know about it, we can just keep it in the back of our mind. So let's say it's a request for something that wouldn't work with XCOM and can't be done. But let's say we do another game where it could be done, or it would work better in that game. Then we have it in the back of our minds. So just feel free to sort of throw us little ideas, little bits of feedback. We can never promise to fix or implement all of these different ideas, but by you sending them to us, we can basically grade them, think about them, understand where people are coming from, and then we can push forward and take those into account for patches, updates, new games. I mean, we've already done that with even though we don't plan on supporting the FOSS drivers, we started getting loads of feedback about people who are trying to use the FOSS drivers or having problems, so we kind of reached out and tried to help a little bit. So things like that. If you have something specific, even if you're not technically supported, let us know. I mean, the answer might be thanks for letting us know, but you're not technically supported. But don't think that goes into a black hole. Even if we answer that and we send you that back, your information will still get tagged and we'll still put it on a list of things. So yeah, so basically what I'm saying is just keep on sending us stuff in. Nothing is too small. The little things, I got an email in about the fact that Windows and Linux use very slightly different file paths for save game syncing, which was actually due to how Steam did the save game sync stuff. But again, that's a really useful little bit of information to know that some people have got a problem with it. So what we can do is, even though we probably can't change that for XCOM because that's how it was all set up on the Steam Cloud server, but let's say the next game, we can just go, ooh, double check that all of the different file paths match up and everything, because a few people might do something manually. So no matter how small or how tiny you think the suggestion might be, send it to us, and we can take it on board. It isn't sort of a promise that we fix every tiny little thing that gets sent in. It's more, if you send it in, we can put it in a list and we can keep an eye out and maybe fix it, or at least sort of take it into account for the next title.
So one other thing I did want to raise, and just at least mention in passing, is have you read Soeb's port report on XCOM?
It's a little tricky. I admit the performance stuff, which we weren't getting the figures of being that far off ourselves. It was quite surprising, and also the comments in general from all of the different forums and stuff is that the performance is really good on Linux. That said, it was interesting to know that certain driver and card combinations have slightly lower performance than others. I mean, it was an interesting piece of information that sort of, we've taken on board, and it's on our internal wiki. We have an internal wiki for all of our games, so that was linked on there. Yeah, I mean, it was discussed inside along with quite a few other different posts and links. It's quite a nice thing that people are going through and giving Linux games that kind of attention. I only wished the driver and card combination he tested on was one of the ones where the Linux machine outperforms Windows, because there are a couple of cards which are very similar to the one he tested on, where in our office we're, I think, 1 or 2 frames quicker than booted on the same machine in Windows. So it does show how much difference different hardware and software combinations can make on Linux compared to Mac. Whereas Mac, it's a lot easier. You install your latest OS, you know what the hardware is, you know what the performance is going to be. Whereas on Linux, there's a little bit more up and down, I think, which is, again, it's a bit of a learning experience for us, but it's something we're going to try and keep on improving. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect game, and there's no such thing as fast enough, so we'll just keep on trying to improve.
And it's probably worth noting as well that those articles, or that series of articles, are still in its infancy. More details and particularly on driver versions and that sort of thing are likely to be well included in future versions. And I'm kind of hopeful that whether Soeb himself manages to get his hands on more stuff, or whether he finds a way to let other people contribute benchmarking information, it'd be nice to see some more a range of comparisons of different hardware configurations and what kind of difference that can make to the titles.
Yeah, the one thing I have to add to that is hopefully going down the line, when we have more Linux games, we'll have ones with a built-in performance test, because XCOM doesn't have a frame rate test. So the tests it's a little bit harder for Soeb to do it, because it wasn't dead on, because you can't test exactly the same thing in a clean environment, which is what a benchmark's designed to do.
Right.
For example, on the Mac, we've got Tomb Raider, we've got Formula 1. These games all have built-in benchmarks that you can run off the command line. So the game fires up, runs the test, quits, dumps out an XML. It's unfortunate XCOM didn't have one of those, so it's slightly harder to do the performance test. But if we do have a game that has a benchmark, we're definitely going to give Soap early access so he can run his tests and everything. So on launch day, we'll be able to show stuff off. Yes, I did mention 2 games, but those were both Mac games. Those aren't anything to do with Linux. I didn't make a boopsie.
They are too eager to get excited.
I think that's probably the big takeaway is that everybody is excited at the moment, and I've been surprised at the level of staying power that XCOM and Civilization as well have had on my friends list. Just seeing the number of people who have been playing the hell out of those games.
Constantly, yeah, it's brilliant.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's playing it, and it does make us all smile when we see all the different Linux people playing the game. Just because sort of for you guys it's been out for about a month or so, but I mean it's been we've seen it gestating from sort of Alpha 1 all the way through to what you guys finally played. So it's just great thinking of all of that effort and time and just seeing people just post like in this thread right now, thanks a lot, I really love the game. It was just like, those kind of things are what in a way make porting games and making games worthwhile, is knowing that people are getting so much fun out of something that you've worked on.
I want to thank you for making it possible for me to rage at the game's stupid RNG you have nothing to do with on my favorite operating system. It was really fun.
You're completely welcome.
I have to say I may have cursed a little bit at the game myself when I first encountered 12 chrysalids mob me at point blank range. Like, what the hell? Come on!
That just means it's working as intended.
I have actually stood up from my desk and walked out the test lab once or twice.
It's funny, I played that level again and they all came in little small batches of 3 and were totally manageable, but the first time I fired up that level I thought, there's no way I can live this, maybe it's part of the story that I'm meant to fail.
Yeah, talking to, getting some of our test guys, one of his Linux test accounts is, I think it got about 800 hours of XCOM. So, yeah, and even he can get his sort of backside handed to him if you get the wrong set of chrysalids on Iron Man. But yeah, I don't even want to try and play against him. He can sort of speed through the game in half a day almost. It's normally you got to build up and kind of try and defend everything, but if you are quick enough, you can kind of just go straight for the ending without upgrading very much. The only downside is one mistake and it's all over. Yeah, those guys have our admiration, because sort of playing a game and testing it is, I think, one of the key things is our test guys tested the game so much to find all these different little tiny things, and it takes a lot of dedication to find another bug after testing for like 400 hours, because by that point you kind of know everything, and it's just keeping the focus to find that last little, there's a flicker there, or there's something there. I'm glad that I only had to test for a short period, because I basically do the production stuff. But I think they did quite a good job. I'll give them a public thank you for all the hard work and hundreds of hours of testing.
And so are all of your testers employed internally, or do you have any external testers? Are they volunteers?
Near the end of a project, we tend to reach out to people who have played our games before, who are kind of keen on the game genre that's coming, and ask them if they would like to help. We do primarily all of our testing in-house, but we find it really valuable to give out basically almost release candidate versions of the games to make sure that sort of in real-world systems everything works fine. And just to answer Telly 42, no, I'd say sort of everybody's fully grown adults in our test lab, at least chronologically. I just spend a large amount of time in the test room as well, so I count myself under that one. Yeah, in terms of our external testers, they tend to have to be old enough to sign an NDA. But that aside, you just got to love games, really, and be willing to deal with a game that isn't quite finished. If you're really sort of slightly technically minded, or you kind of really love a game and you've played it a lot on the original platform, and you're willing to put a few hours in a week, near the end of a project, you're the kind of person we'd want to send a quiet message to. Obviously, we don't have anything now, but when it gets around about that time, if you happen to be hanging around on this Mumble or other things like that, you might just get a private message from me of going, "Hey, would you like to test something?"
Okay, we'll
Exciting.
keep that in mind.
No, everybody's constantly AFKing 24/7 on this Mumble.
Yep. That's fine. That's fine. If people want to do that, we can set up an idle channel and they can hang in there.
Oh, a bit like TF2 servers.
So, let's conclude this, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've got time to hang around for the rest of the show? It's totally fine if you want to disappear here, Edwin.
I think I might have to log off just because it's 9:20, and as well as a games producer, I'm also a father to a very young and noisy little girl who I think I need to get to bed. So it's been.
No problems.
I'll sign off now. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to all you guys, and hopefully I've been more useful than I've rambled. I'll hope to see you guys, and we'll definitely want to keep in touch with all of you guys in the community. I tend to hang around a lot myself. I'm @deduck_feral on most places. The other person you might see floating around is our head of support, Gerard, who's Gerard_feral. So if you see any of us online on Steam or on the different forums, feel free to drop in and say hello.
I can vouch for that. I've got Edwin on my friends list, and he's been very responsive when I've said hi. So yeah, I imagine you're working most of the time, so try not to hassle him too much.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if I'm working, I tend to just turn all that stuff on mute. So if I'm not logged on, it's probably because I'm actually making the next Linux game. So the best way of thinking about it is, if it isn't important enough to delay the next Linux game, then well, it isn't
Nice.
quite like that. But yeah, I mean, sort of, I try and talk to you guys, but sort of my main job is the head of production. So I like doing all of the social stuff and helping you guys out. But if I don't reply, I'm probably really busy. So please don't take it personally, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can.
Okay. We're very thankful that you came on the cast. Everyone in chat seems incredibly excited and thanking you for coming.
You're welcome, guys.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we're going to keep our eyes out for whatever comes next. And good luck with the launch of the upcoming XCOM patch.
Thanks a lot. I'll let you guys all know, and we'll try and get a fix list out so that you guys know exactly what was fixed. But I pretty much went through it on the cast, but to save people trawling through the cast, we'll try and get a quick bullet point list of what we fixed.
Okay, that's awesome.
Well, thanks a lot, everyone, and yeah, I'll hope to speak to you later on in the year with more Linux news.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. It's nice to see. You know, normally I'm a proponent of internal porting and internal development, but it's nice to see that there are porting studios out there who are keen on a very real connection with the user base. I think that's really nice to see as well. So moving on to SteamLUG community stuff, might just have a very, very quick run through of our previous events. Following the last cast, we had Skulls of the Shogun with Flibbit joining us as a guest. How'd you find that, John? Because you joined us for that, after all.
Problematic, I have to say. Yeah, well, I popped into single player and listened to you guys attempt to have some multiplayer fun. So
Seemed like they had some fun, but you embarrassed Flibbit by pointing out some bugs he hadn't noticed. I have heard.
we had one bug during the testing phase that was a multiplayer sync issue that we couldn't reliably reproduce, and of course it reliably reproduced during the event. It just meant that whenever we'd start a 4-player game, someone would have to leave, and then it would wake up again.
I mean, like, it certainly was a bit painful, and I hope that it wasn't too awkward for Flibbit, but I didn't have that big a problem. Once we identified what was going on and were able to actually get games running, I had a bit of fun.
Yeah, and it was quite fun, sort of teaching a couple of new players how the game behaves.
Yeah, we also had Left 4 Dead 2, Civilization 5, Team Fortress 2, and of course our regular Guns of Icarus events. The Civilization event was a bit of fun. We played for something disgustingly long, like 7 or 8 hours.
So a short and quick Civ 5 game.
Well, we went. Oh, we'll play small maps and we'll have quick games, and perhaps there is no such thing.
There is no such thing as a quick Civ 5 game. That's just true.
I was foolishly optimistic that we would have something done, that we'd be able to play a 3 or 4 hour game, but no.
No, I can't imagine that happening.
But no, that was fun.
Maybe with an expert player that knows how to shoot for a culture or science victory really quickly, or something like that, but not with people that mostly are just average or have just started.
We had 2 fairly full games running concurrently, and that was pretty fun.
How is the Guns of Icarus events going? I mean,
not too bad. Yesterday's was quite large. We fielded 3 SteamLUG ships and hopped into some 3v3. So it was Linux versus whatever else was out there, and I had a heap of fun. Had a bunch of new people trying captain stuff for the first time, and or some less experienced captains getting some time in the seats. So that was good to see as well. So people learning how to play the game and finding that enjoyable. It's always a rewarding thing to see.
Absolutely. When's our next big event for that? Have we booked on?
I think it's about time we have one scheduled again. So yeah, sometime in August.
Okay, awesome.
Looking at upcoming events as well, after the cast we've got XCOM, which we previously had Steelstorm scheduled for, but we've shifted Steelstorm out a couple of weeks to keep this to be a bit XCOM themed. We've got Worms Reloaded happening as well, and we'll get our August event list up pretty soon during the coming week. I've seen a few requests for Dota events, so I reckon we'll be sure to make sure that we do that.
We might have been a little late on the Dota events, possibly. I think people probably, would have liked weekly ones during the international, just to farm cards and the rest. But
really, I just kind of felt like everybody who was watching the international wanted to do nothing but watch the international.
That was the weird thing. I spent an awful lot of time watching it, and quite a few of the people I'm friends with were playing rather than watching. So I don't know what that's about. So.
It's best to not play much during the international, because if you play public, you get the noob that thinks he can now just pull off the strategy he has seen on the international, and it fails and it puts your team in misery. I've seen that more than once in the last couple of days.
But did you watch much of it at all, Dorita?
I watched most of it. I pretty much the round robin phase and the main event, the later half of the main event. And yeah, it was quite fun. I'm not as worried about the final game not being all that exciting.
Oh yes.
I mean, people were a bit pissed off about that, but it was just both teams played a play style that meant if they didn't get what they wanted early on, they would just get snowballed. So it had to happen like that. But it was interesting to watch anyway.
Yeah, I think there was only one good match out of the finals or whatever. How do you refer to those 5 last games? There was only one that had a really interesting point, and the rest were pretty boring, and some of them were really quick. But
they weren't boring. There was lots of action, but it was one-sided because that's how these teams have played.
No, I'd say some of them were boring. The team I tend to root for, Fnatic, dropped out in the first week, shamefully, and last year's winners also did. So yeah.
That was excellent that they dropped out. They forced the stupid Red Dota into every game, and it didn't work. They got shut down, and they got spanked for their stupid playstyle, which is boring to watch. That is truly boring Dota they are playing.
So yeah, we've also been talking with a couple of the Dota players within the SteamLUG community about maybe trying to set up some regular midweek events for people to get some more time in the game, get some practice in, have some fun.
Yep.
Fingers crossed that something comes of that.
I think that's sensible.
Yeah. Other community stuff. We forgot to mention during, it wasn't last episode, it was the episode before, that Norbert had been doing lots of work on the SteamLUG IRC bot, which includes automatic notifications for humble promotions, titles for imager links, tweet IDs and things. And he's also just added Steam status checking, so now you can run the Steam status command and it'll tell you which bits and pieces are up or down.
Yep, that was yesterday, and it's really neat seeing all the features getting added into that little bot. I've been fairly vague on Twitter the last couple of weeks before this thing actually got published. SteamDB, a bunch of collaborators there, wrote a letter to Valve, just generally talking about security and the lack of response to some things and no process. And some of the guys also wanted to include the fact that rewards tend to be sort of unique items in Dota or something, not something that some serious security researchers are interested in. So we thought it wouldn't encourage decent disclosure. So anyway, I helped edit that quite a few casts ago, and just before holiday I went away and didn't sign it. Got back and it still hadn't been sent, so I signed it, passed it on to some of the other admins in SteamLUG, and Swordfisher signed it too. And this last...
I didn't get to see it.
Oh, sorry, geez, you must have been asleep.
It's cool.
Valve sent the reply back just during the middle of the TI, the international, so it's a bit under the radar, but and only a few sort of games outlets picked it up. They've added a security page on their website now with a bit of process to describe how you can report security problems and issues with the site and the client. So it's a good start, and we're going to continue talking to them about it.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people say that they felt that the response was disappointing, but honestly, I felt like it was positive compared to things like, I don't know if you recall the Super Meat Boy security issue that was reported, and they were all, well, we don't care.
It's on a completely different scale, really.
Oh, it totally is.
It's just with the way Steam is, they, quite a lot of users' credit card information stored. Developers that have access to your hard disk, basically, have accounts through Steam that can get violated by any of these recent hacks. So it's one of these things where you've got to be a little worried that quite a few developers on Twitter were being dismissive of it with the complaints about being able to put JavaScript injection on the store by saying that, well, we already put binaries on your hard disk, we can do anything anyway. And well, yes, that's a concern that there's an awful lot of power given to people that now can actually get through Greenlight fairly easy with sort of vote padding and the rest, and they technically, with an awful lot of the API access and with an exploit, could take over accounts and possibly spend money and the rest. And it is a bit of a concern when it's such a large monetary platform. So
yeah, it's true.
Didn't mean that to be so depressing.
No, it's cool. I mean, like, they do seem to be responsive though when these sorts of things are reported, don't they?
No.
Seem?
The problem is it's because it's not always the same, because you can approach some staff members and it can be instantaneous, and other times it can take a few months for something, and it really is just getting a process there that you can send something into security and they might reply straight away, and it really does need to be something that's at least acknowledged that they have read it, and then they might be working on it and the rest. And it's just the reason Timmy got banned is because he loaded JavaScript on the Steam store in a announcement post. Now Valve had been contacted that exploit existed, but they didn't do anything about it. And I know there isn't much need to be sort of quick on the draw in patching that sort of thing, but if one developer is not even trying notices it, someone who will be wanting to try almost certainly has access to it. So that's all. It's just being a bit more proactive about security, and that's really the thrust of the message. Geez, you did a short interview recently.
I did. With the Try and Enchanted edition on the way, I reached out. I think it was at the beginning of June. Things were unfortunately a little bit slow in pulling everything together for that. But I reached out and talked to Frozenbyte about how things are looking for them with Linux stuff at the moment. Unfortunately, there was a plan to do a simultaneous release for Linux, but unfortunately that slipped behind. There are still lingering Linux issues that they wanted to wait to resolve before they pushed things live. But hopefully we'll see that soon. Unfortunately, it looks like we won't be getting access to the original Trine builds either. And I think that's mostly because it's just, the original game in its original state that is being made available there, and right now they're not comfortable rolling that out to Linux users just because it's that old port and is a bit fiddly.
Okay. I mean, slightly depressing, but acceptable.
Yeah, this I don't know whether or not it's going to happen. I certainly, nothing has been announced. It's just something that briefly chatted about. Was the idea of doing a Steam beta of the Linux client. Maybe just to get Linux users a bit of early access to that before it's ready. Maybe to have a look at what some of those rough edges are. But we'll see if something comes of that.
Okay, so what sort of time frame is that? End of the summer, maybe?
Couple of months,
Okay.
maybe. It's hard to say,
Yeah, true.
They're certainly not willing to commit to any kind of time frame, just because until these things are sorted, you don't know how long they take. I mean, I'd like to hope that it can be resolved sooner rather than later. In the grand scheme of things, I guess a couple of months isn't that long.
Yeah.
But I think, as far as I'm aware, I think this will be replacing all of the existing Trine 1 builds. So if you want to keep a hold of the old stuff, if you've got access to the Humble Bundle build, wouldn't be a bad idea to back that up.
I'll do that later.
I was going to say, I should probably also mention that the Trine 1 the Trine Enchanted Edition is actually a port of the original Trine, revamping the content, bringing it to the Trine 2 engine so that we get all the Trine 2 features like online multiplayer, improved graphics and performance and stuff, and all of those sorts of extra cool features. So it will be adding some value to the game. Everybody who already owns Trine will get a copy of it. It's the same app idea, which is sweet. And I go into a little bit of detail on that in that article there. So yeah.
When we started recording our cast, we wondered how we would host it and how we could distribute it. And YouTube was on the list, but we never really got around to it. We sort of had a couple of plans, and we actually worked on a couple of different sort of static graphics. And Roberto Zak initially actually made a whole video edit of the first one with moving video of all the games we were discussing. And
yeah,
I was reluctant to do that because of all the copyright claims that happen nowadays on these sort of things. So sort of over Christmas, we were looking at doing, working on a static image. And again, Roberto Zek offered one up, and, just time got in the way and everything. This last couple of weeks, I've been working on a nice handy SVG thing that we can output on the website via PHP so that we can, make a little title card with all the developers and information on. And over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be putting up a YouTube video of each cast every day up until this one. And then they'll come out sort of the day that the cast does. And Cheese has just lunk the playlist for season 1. It's got 4 episodes in at the moment, I think. And episode 5 is already uploaded, but it's going to get published tomorrow at lunchtime. And as ever, give us feedback if it's illegible or it doesn't convey enough information. Give us feedback.
Even though it's taken quite some time in coming, I do feel a little bit like Roberto Zek was the catalyst in getting the YouTube stuff moving forward. So definitely want to say thank you there.
Yes, unsung hero. Yes, thank you.
One thing that we'd kind of talked about, you were talking about maybe doing an edit of some of the some snippets from the shows as sort of an introduction to the show, or maybe to each season to include in each playlist.
Well, I was thinking that the YouTube channel itself sort of needs a 1 or 2 minute, hello, we're SteamLUG Cast, we just generally talk about gaming. A friendly thing. And I don't know if we're going a little over on this, so I think maybe next time we can record it at the end of the show.
Yeah, I was thinking it'd be good to get people together and do something new rather than just chop up bits from old stuff. So it'd be kind of, because then we can reflect on things as well.
Yeah, and maybe we can get some of our previous hosts on, Meklu, and Mim, and
yeah, that'd be sweet. It'd be kind of neat to do one to accompany each season. To go on each playlist, or maybe after the season's finished, just a quick, minute or so worth of, here's what we did over the year, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm more in favor of a general one that isn't strictly constrained to one season, because YouTube has for channel pages these introduction video spots. You can put an introduction video or any old video, so that might be more worthwhile.
Well, the intention was the general one for the, the non-subscriber page that we can show people when they land on SteamLUG, and
right.
And if we can do a sort of we had a whole episode for the last season as a sum up, the one that happened on sort of the one that came out on New Year's Eve. So that's
I don't know
probably
if
a
I
little
want that
too
to be
lengthy.
everybody's first impression, though. That's pretty crazy.
No, but it would be at the end of the playlist, so it would be something that people would hear as a recap.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure we'd want it to sort of start the content. Here's everything we did. You don't need to listen to the rest of it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess. I was just thinking more along the lines of introducing the hosts who are going to be in the rest of the series or rest of the season at the beginning, so that you can get an eye for accents and just a bit of forewarning for who's going to be there and who's not. But I don't know, stuff to play with, ideas to mess around with.
Yeah. So, Steam and Valve news.
Some big client updates.
They've pushed a far newer update of WebKit into the client, so the overlay and the embedded web view now have multi-threading, better support. I think the WebM support's improved, and it's a far better web browser.
Is it fast yet?
It doesn't work at all for me at the moment.
It's WebKit, so your mileage may vary. Games can be applied to multiple categories, so if you've got something that's a roguelite dungeon RPG, you can put them in a bunch of categories now, and so much better to organise all your games now. So good.
Yeah, people are pretty excited about that one.
Oh, I squeed.
I don't use it.
I had hoped to find time to test and make sure that this was correct, but apparently Steam VR, launching VR games from Steam VR has been sorted out. Previously I'd noticed that there was a case problem and reported that, but I haven't had a chance to test and make sure that it's fine.
Yeah, I've seen Joe's update post to say that, this has been fixed, but I don't have a VR headset, so I can't test it.
But I will check that within the next few days and report back. And
Music Beta is now available to the desktop client. I thought they'd actually made that available to everyone in the beta, but I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure what.
Yes, they did in one of the latest betas. Everybody can use it now.
Yeah, so it's public now.
I'm in the latest. I don't get access to it, so I don't know what's wrong. Steam being Steam.
So out of interest, is the in-client browser like the thing that you would go to view your notifications, for example, or a store page? Is that working for you guys at the moment? Because it hasn't worked for me since that update came through.
It's working for me.
Okay.
For me as well, though it has been a bit flaky lately in the client, while it hasn't been flaky in the regular web browser, so there might be something going on.
Yeah, I've had noticeable sort of latency in interacting with the UE elements, so pressing the edit profile button, sometimes it doesn't register that I've clicked anything for a couple of seconds, and then it only updates when the actual page is downloaded, which, it's really frustrating not to have that feedback, but no, it's all working, Cheese, so...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I care. I've always found it to be too slow to be usable. I can launch a browser faster than I can get to anything in the client, so yeah, just never use it.
Yeah. In this same update, Valve pushed some new images, and one of them contained an updated picture of the Steam controller prototype. It features the pads as well as a stick instead of the D-pad on the left-hand side now.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting move.
Yeah, I don't understand really. If these pads are so good at stick stuff, why do they need a stick? And don't they need a D-pad for stuff like fighting games?
Yeah, that's the thing that people seem to be on about the most, the missing D-pad, while it is entirely possible that the touchpads are good enough with their force feedback as a linear and input device.
Yeah, but people use the D-pads as additional buttons, like for inventory control or, selecting weapons or changing stances.
But when you use both pads for movement, you have the stick for that, and there you have more fine-grained controls, so I don't... People are like, it has been like that on my old controller, so it must be like that on the Steam controller, while everybody should know that this controller tries to do things differently.
Well, it seems to be doing that less and less.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually not having a D-pad at all is a most different thing compared to all the other controllers.
Yes, but the same way they went to the ABXY diamond shape is because people had issues with, either button memory or, there are an awful lot of games that have sort of patterns of control, and getting rid of the D-pad and putting in a stick, to me, feels like a backward step. Just because you can't get that sort of digital sort of selection with a stick, because then you have to sort of flick it in one direction or something.
Yes, but you won't use a stick for that. You will use one of the pads for that.
But the pads are for looking and moving, surely.
But not in the game where you would actually use a D-pad for moving. Like, people are... This is the thinking I can't get behind. Like,
If you
but
need
I
to
use a
look and
D-pad
move,
for that.
Do you need...
But that doesn't apply to the games where you would use a pad for moving.
But then do you have to stop looking and moving to use the pad to do something else? Probably. So then
Are there any games where you would be looking and moving and still use the pad? I mean, I don't use gamepads, so this is a legitimate question.
quite often I can be moving my sticks and holding one of the triggers as well as tapping one of the things just to quickly swap between bits and bobs.
But that's a stick would to do that as well.
It's just how games are nowadays. You know, something like BioShock or whatever. You know, you've got all the different abilities that you can quickly swap between, and the rest is just, you know.
Well, it's not like there are fewer buttons to interact with, though. There seem to be...
No, it's swapping the D-pad for a stick makes it harder to precisely get your selection in. That's all.
That's an assumption.
You follow Flibbit on Twitter. Did you see his comments about platforming issues with the pads? The problem is because you don't have that sort of selection, it has to guess where, you know, which way you're pushing and the rest. And if you're then going to transfer that to the stick, I can't see it being as efficient as what we currently have with controllers, that's all.
Yeah, but I still think having a stick instead of a D-pad gives more value because analog control actually adds something to some genres. It's better for any kind of flight game or even a racing game. And sometimes it's good to have your movement there, so you have really nice, well-working speed transitions from sneaking to sprinting or whatever. And then you have the pad on the right side for actual precise looking around and aiming. I think that brings more value to the overall controller setup than having an old, clunky, digital-only D-pad that does the same thing, pointing in a direction, just with less options than a stick. And if you need precise controls, I would still point to the touchpad that probably does linear input better than you would expect it to. That is my assumption on this matter.
I feel like they'd need to have some kind of haptic feedback or something to give you a better way to orient yourself, because you know, you say that up is up, but your finger is not, or your thumb or whatever type of appendage you touch the stick with, it's never aligned directly to it or cardinally to it, you know, so you've got to know what direction that is, and that's not always going to be consistent. And so having on a D-pad, you know, having that feel of this is up, exactly, and you know where up is, that's going to create less, or that's a more clear and more precise communication of direction.
I would be okay with them swapping it out for a stick if they didn't also have two of these pads, because now they've got a pad and a stick, and they both do analog circular motion. It just seems a bit... Which one do you choose to use with your left thumb?
The pad does exactly nothing analog. It's exactly...
It's got different modes, so I just don't...
Yeah, but it is a completely linear input device. It's always about your position on the pad. It could emulate something analog, but it's in essence a different input device. Completely different.
Personally, I think this move's a bad one. Recently, someone visited Valve just before the International and shared a whole load of images, and one of them was an animated GIF that included a rather blurred version of the controller being shown. But there's one thing you can see, and it looks like there's something glowing in the center, and not just glowing, but changing sort of color or something. They may have introduced a little screen back again.
That would be interesting and surprising.
There is a big circular button in the middle of the controller, and I wonder if that just, you know, like the Optimus keyboard keys, it's just a little LCD that sort of can update status information or something. I don't know, I'd like to see what they're trying to do there.
On a side note, do any of you people know if there's a shortcut to kill big picture mode?
Just the usual Alt F4, or, you know, no. There's not a Steam-oriented one, I don't think.
Great, because I think I'm stuck.
Oh, did you just... We can still hear you. Let's go on with the show.
So the Saxies are on again. For
Woo.
anybody who's excited by that.
What are the
Disappointingly,
Saxies?
there's it's a short film competition geared towards getting people to make stuff in Source Filmmaker, which sadly we don't yet have on Linux.
Do you truly, honestly expect this? Because I was a bit not caring about their tools being on Linux.
You don't care about it not being on Linux?
I would like it, yeah.
Valve doesn't care about it not being on Linux. It seems like they aren't precisely. They haven't talked about bringing any of their tools to Linux. It's not like we are getting Hammer or anything. That might be a bit harder than Source Filmmaker, but I don't think it's on their radar. I would be happy if it came, but I don't see it coming.
Yeah, I would like to see it as well, but yeah, no indication that that there are any plans for that. And it's kind of sad to see us excluded from these sorts of creative things, which reminds me that I totally forgot to mention that we're going to schedule a Portal 2 mapping competition for next month.
Oh, yes. People should look forward to that.
Yeah, that should be pretty cool. We're going to leave it open for a couple of weeks. Yeah, we'll have an event, like a normal event, which is geared towards giving people a chance to get familiar with the editor, and then we're going to come back a few weeks later and talk about all the maps that people have made, give them a try, and that sort of stuff. We're expecting to have a special guest for that, who is one of the mappers who helped pre-populate the Perpetual Testing Initiative with maps, so a very experienced mapper who's also worked on a couple of Portal mods that are available for Linux. So that should be exciting as well.
I cannot wait. And I do hope they bring all their tools over, because they're pretty damn nifty creative outlets.
Yeah, I feel like there's certainly exciting things that people within the Linux community would be doing if those tools were available.
Right, so on to tech news. The Unity devs are hunting for gamepad profiles to supplement and to better Unity 5 input.
Our good friend Tack has put out a call asking for people to give SDL-style mappings for their gamepads and things. It's also going to support SDL game controller config, which is what Steam Big Picture Mode uses to send gamepad configuration details to games and stuff. So Unity games should just automatically pick that up once Unity 5 is out. So that's kind of exciting for people who use joysticks and gamepads and stuff.
It seems every cast we have an Unreal update. Unreal 4.3 has been released with a load of little changes. Open Broadcaster software are looking for feedback from Linux users. We mentioned this last cast and gave links, so I'm sure some of you have tried it out already. Give them feedback. They would welcome it.
Like, geez, you could tell them that it freaking doesn't work for you at all.
I already have. Been chatting with the developer a little bit. We've got Namoda here in chat. We can totally unmute him and let him give us his first-hand impressions of OBS, if we want.
If he's interested, he can unmute.
Welcome!
Hey, Namoda.
Yeah, OBS has been working really great. It's still beta, and you can still tell there's some rough edges. It crashes if you try to reconfigure it before it's ready, but clear out your config and redo it, and everything seems to work really well.
The ability to manage scenes and stuff the way OBS does certainly opens up a lot more powerful flexibility that other streaming software on Linux doesn't seem to have.
I honestly haven't played with much of any of the options on Linux for streaming. My upload's just terrible.
Yeah, mine's not so good either. But the ability to, like, if you want to have your webcam on the screen at the same time, or if you want to add some kind of, bitmap titling to the bottom of your stream, at the moment doing it with any piece of software that's currently released on Linux is kind of fiddly, but OBS makes that a lot simpler. And it's got this capture mode for just capturing X windows directly, and I think that's probably way more performant than I was expecting.
Oh, neat.
For me, the biggest issue is audio.
I can record to file, but I can't stream at the moment.
Is that with SSR, it is such a huge pain to capture audio on all your devices and get them all merged with Pulse Audio. But with OBS, you have separate channels and you can add new ones, and it's just all mixed for you, and it's great.
Is it just a streaming system, or can you get it to write to hard disk as well, so that it's possibly better for sort of doing offline rendering and then upload to YouTube or something?
You can do it to a hard drive. That's what I've been briefly doing because I can't stream out to the internet currently. I can stream to file fine, and yeah, it's good.
Okay, because whenever I've done a bit of Minecraft recording, I used GLC, and I always had problems. Either it would either forget one of the audio channels, either the game or my microphone, or I'd have issues muxing the two together afterwards. And if there is an option I can use that admittedly is for streaming, but I can just write it to disk and then mux it and then upload, I'd be happy.
Yeah, well, you can totally do that.
Awesome, might try then.
So Valve are hunting for a software engineer for the SteamOS team.
Yes, they are. They need a decent amount of experience commercially, 5 years. C++ knowledge is welcome. English knowledge is welcome, but it's not required. And
Yeah, so if anybody within the SteamLUG community is applying for it and feels comfortable talking about it, get in touch. We'd love to hear how you go.
As always. ScumVM has had a recent update, version 1.7.0. It's added a few more games. Chivalry is Not Dead, Return to Ringworld, The Neverhood, Mortville Manor, and Voyeur. It also has added additional support for some Windows and Mac games that are currently live on Steam. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, The Fate of Atlantis, Loom, and The Dig. So that should, if any of you compile it yourself, it should support even more games that you have access to.
I think The Neverhood is probably the most notable title that everybody I've talked to is excited about.
I've only heard of 2 of those, and The Neverhood's probably top of those 2, yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the Steam versions of Indiana Jones and stuff is that they were, from what I understand, redeveloped or reported from the original source rather than using ScumVM or anything, so they inherently lost some compatibility with the changes that were made there. So it's nice to see those catching up, or support for those catching up.
Why did they do that? That sounds like a bit of a waste of effort. There are other ScumVM titles on Steam, aren't there?
Was that a while ago, Cheese?
They've been out for quite some time, yeah. As far as wasted effort goes, I don't know. I mean, really, I think it's just a case of it's a free software project, and people who are excited by something, that's what they work on, and that's cool.
I don't mean ScumVM being wasted effort. I mean the original reporting of the source instead of using ScumVM.
Oh, right, yeah, for sure. I don't know why they didn't ship with ScumVM. It seems stupid to me.
Well, we don't know why, but legal issues always come up in these sort of things, don't they? That they're worried that shipping something like ScumVM would be inviting legal issues. And yeah, I know, I fully understand the legal aspect of it, but lawyers are lawyers, and they get a bit shirty about stuff like that.
They are scared like little deer. They hush away into the forest if you look at them, and then they come out with a lawsuit and you're broke.
I think the biggest concern is stuff like having contributors go, hey, I want to get paid for my work, but it's all licensed in a way that is usable. It's not like there can be any serious repercussions that aren't, or legal repercussions that aren't easy enough to get out of, as long as they're not doing something dodgy.
In general gaming news, something big has happened we have all been waiting for. GOG has launched their Linux support with 50 titles, many of which are discounted. And yes, they support Ubuntu and Mint, so they support Ubuntu and Ubuntu. And still they offer debs and tarballs, which you can use if you are on another distro. And it's just the standard GOG experience. You go to your library, click the Linux tab and download it and play it.
Quite a lot of the selection is new / exclusive to GOG, so it's not stuff that's on Steam already. So if you haven't checked the list out, why don't you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see this, because this is much further ahead than their previously scheduled estimated time for launch. So it's very nice to see them recognizing the value of positive surprises there.
Yeah, absolutely. It came completely out of the blue, and they've said publicly that they didn't want to wait, and it's interesting launching now with a smaller selection of games, but I think they're probably willing to get feedback early to see how these are, and they've got a fairly decent selection of titles that people can comment on.
What is noticeably absent, though, is their own game, The Witcher 2. I think that speaks about how the reception of that port and the general understanding has reached CD Projekt, that they will not put up their flagship game at the moment with their Linux launch. Or what do you guys think?
They're in a bit of a hard place there, aren't they? Because if they had have published, if they had published it on the site in this launch, people would say that they're ignoring the complaints they've had on the port. So, I mean, we know updates are coming. We know VP are working on stuff. So, I think we just need to give them a bit more time to work on it.
The sad part is, a few people have already complained publicly in forums on Gaming on Linux and other places about there being wine games on there. Which I was
kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, every sane person should expect and accept that for old games. There's nothing outrageous being done there. And as far as I've heard, some of the even newer games like Flat Out 2, which are wine wrapped, work outstandingly well for most people. So why are you doing this, guys? This is what GOG is mostly about. Bringing old games to you and using different technology to enable that on different platforms, like DOSBox and ScumVM, and for Linux it will be Wine, and for Mac it has been Wine. So,
yeah,
please, this is how this works, guys.
I honestly don't see any difference between Wine and DOSBox and ScumVM and Mono and Java. They're all implementing stuff that isn't, native, or when people say that they bitch and moan about things being not native, it's those kind of technologies are still in the same space, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you get your support, they support you with a money-back guarantee, which is super unique for distributors in the game space.
Right.
I mean, they make sure it works for you if you run on a supported operating system. Sorry, that's my cat flipping out.
And when you're talking about support, people go, "Oh, this isn't supporting Linux. It's running in Wine or whatever." That you can't call that Linux support. Support is about providing support. It's not necessarily about whether it's native or not. It's about whether or not they're going to be responsive to problems and sort you out if something's not good or not working. So they've got that money back guarantee. There's certainly no reason to be wary of grabbing something that doesn't work so well. If it doesn't work, it's supported, so you can get support for it.
Some games have been recently noticed on SteamDB again. Worms Clan Wars, Torchlight, and Torchlight 2 have all had Linux-related activity, so it looks like those ports / developments getting worked on at the moment.
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to know what's going to come of them.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see either of the Torchlight ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to remind people, the Torchlight 1 has been ported to Linux, it has been in a Humble Bundle, and the only place to buy it legally now, if you didn't get it in the Humble Bundle, is the Ubuntu Software Center on Ubuntu versions before 13.10, I think. Or even sooner, that at least like around 12 or 4, so they didn't even bring that forward in the Ubuntu Software Center, which is telling a lot. So it's nice to see that they actually care about the thing they already ported to Linux, and on top of that care about a new game coming to Linux, in whichever capacity it might arrive. Might be a bundle, might be something else.
Well, they had some minor rendering issues in Torchlight, didn't they? So it may be that they were just...
Yeah, they fixed those. Do you mean the faceless character?
Yes.
Yeah, they fixed that. So they should have at least put it out somewhere to buy.
So some exciting news. Terraria has been shown running on Ubuntu.
Yes,
and
it
I'm
is.
pretty damn happy at this.
Yes, it's running in FNA, the monogame thingy that Libet has developed or worked on. And yes, it looks like it is actually coming. It seems like we can expect it soon enough, which would be jolly good news, because that game is awesome and you should buy it if it comes out.
Yep, can't wait to get back in. I hope the character save files I've got on the map will work, but I don't honestly know about the compatibility, because it was quite a few updates ago that I was playing
Yeah,
Underwine.
you should re-roll. You should honestly re-roll and experience it from the get-go again.
But I'd got to hard mode, and I was halfway through defeating all the stuff in that.
But you miss all the new content they put in the normal mode, and
I know. I never like map resets with Don't Starve, Minecraft, etc. It's just so much work that goes away. So the Starbound devs, talking about more procedurally generated worlds, have been reflecting on their early access experiences. And have either of you read this or the comments on Reddit?
I have read this and it was a bit awful because it's that like, well, 1.0 is just a number. It sounded like that a bit. Yes, but people have expected stuff from you. They said, well, we wanted to give you updates hard and fast, but then somebody complained and we stopped. But you have nightlies now, so be happy, because nightlies are totally a thing you want to play with if you want to have a good game experience. I'm a bit frustrated, though the follow-up they have on Reddit is a bit better worded, but people are righteously frustrated about this game not having any new content for so long because it was advertised as being updated faster. Again, even if it wasn't, we are way beyond fast, we are way beyond slow, we have reached creepingly slow, and people have genuinely, without wanting to troll, asked in the Steam forums for Starbound if the game is dead, because so little has happened.
Yeah.
Sorry for ranting, but I also have the feels about it.
That was a mini rant, Derrida. I've been quite vocal in a couple of casts to say that I want Starbound to be updated a bit more.
Have you tried running the nightly builds?
I haven't, but I run nightly and betas of everything else. It's, some of my gaming I want to be stable.
Yeah, I have, and it's super slow. The progression is completely broken. They just flat out give you everything for free in the 3D printer, so it isn't really a proper gameplay experience. It is truly a nightly, and enemies don't spawn, so what do you even do?
Oh, yeah, how do you do anything?
It's a cop-out saying that nightlies are as good as regular hard and fast updates like they tried to do in the beginning.
I wasn't meaning to say that. I was meaning to say that, the nightlies are evidence that there is development going on. But aren't there also monthly builds or weekly builds or something, as well as the nightlies?
They have a channel they have the stable channel, they have an unstable channel and the nightly channel, but nothing happens in unstable.
Yeah, okay.
If they wanted to really deal with the problem of people complaining about the stuff being wiped and updates breaking too much shit, they could have had the stable channel like it is now, where really nothing happens for a long time, and the unstable doing the hard and fast stuff they have talked about in the beginning. But they don't. They throw a nightly at you, and it is not good. It is not what people wanted. It is not what they talked about in the beginning. It's evident.
I would prefer something in the middle, so that each month they would wipe it until launch, so that you get regular content updates, because at the moment I've got the option of being on stable and not having a wipe at all, so not getting anything interesting, and then being on the other side of not actually being able to do anything because it's constantly getting wiped. It just seems a bit... So, a game we mentioned last time, Bang Bang Bang, ! It's released.
Hooray!
Yay.
Comments?
I haven't really played it much since release, but I still think it's interesting and enjoyable. I don't know. You need to have people to play it with. It's certainly nowhere near as interesting with bots, and that's the main reason I haven't been playing it. I don't think I mentioned it in the last cast, but just after we finished recording, it got bot support, so you can play on your own now. Light, which we mentioned in a previous episode, it had a cancelled Kickstarter campaign, and we were all a little bit sad about it at the time. Was picked up by Team 17 for publishing and is now available. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it's a sort of stealth-oriented top-down thing, which looks pretty neat, I think.
It's, Mike Bethel's working on Volume at the moment, which is, a 3D stealth game. It sort of looks like, what if he'd gone halfway between Thomas Was Alone and Volume? It just looks so.
Makes me think of like Monaco a little bit, although it's got more visual.
Yeah, with the sort of visibility.
Yeah, it's got more visual representation of like view cones and where sounds and stuff are coming from.
Yeah. So another game, Cheese, that you've been talking about a lot, Crypt of the Necrodancer. It is due for Steam Early Access release on the 30th of July.
Yes, this is exciting. Right now, the developers have what they're calling the community is doing this big thing called Necrothon, where lots and lots of people are streaming at the moment. The developers are what am I saying? Also releasing a piece of special art every day in the lead up to release. I'm super excited for this. It's very cool.
Oh, that's cute. So Orbital Gear I haven't actually heard of. Beta Linux builds are coming soon. Do you know about this game, either of you do?
Orbital Gear, yes. So you guys ever played Soldat?
Yes.
Nope.
Okay. It's kind of like Soldat.
Really, Derrida?
I know what it is, but it never tickled my fancy, so I skipped it.
But so the idea is that it's a sort of very zoomed out multiplayer deathmatch platformer thing. Orbital Gear, stands out from Soldat as being you kind of jump between planets and stuff, and so that you've got like localized gravity that you get to deal with. So instead of having platforms that you jump between planets, so you can run around the planet and jump off the other side or whatever.
Okay, cool. Frozen End Zone is now been renamed to Frozen Cortex. It has a new trailer.
It has a new trailer and a Linux beta build. And it looks quite exciting. It's like American football with robots and a smaller court, and you go back and forth instead only one team goes one way all the time. It's actually more like rugby if I look at it. Any one of you already played it?
Nope.
I haven't, but I'm looking to get into it. It looks kind of interesting. I've been kind of following development for a little bit.
I'm waiting for Frozen Cricket.
Not going to happen. You need to make it yourself.
With hookers.
Don't forget the blackjack.
So, Gaming on Linux have had an interview with Aspia about Civilization 5.
Yes. So Liam reached out to Aspire and had a chat with them about their porting experiences and where they went with stuff and how they approach things. And that's pretty interesting. Either of you had a chance to read it?
Yes, I love the poster they have apparently put up in their office about all the Linux reactions to Civ 5.
Oh.
Yeah.
It is quite awesome.
I actually got to read the article before it was published, and I suggested to Liam that he contact them and ask for a copy of the poster to include in the article.
It'd be cool to have that signed, wouldn't it?
Because it's nice to highlight that, Yeah.
It's nice that we've got some generously nice people in the community.
Of the 3 Mac porting houses that now have ported their first title to Linux, 2 for 1 lovers. That's a good overall result. I mean, they even put up a poster. But in other news here, they're teasing at new games, which is always good news.
Well, I don't know about teasing, but yeah, new games is good.
I do hope we can bring that 3 for 3, honestly, and we shall see in the future.
But yeah, I find it interesting that Take-Two have engaged both have engaged both Feral and Aspire to do ports of Firaxis games. It kind of be curious to know whether or not that's them hedging their bets, or whether that's the result of finding better experiences with a different porter than another one, but still keeping the other one around for certain properties. I don't know.
Maybe it's just the manpower thing. Maybe they are 2K is really into porting to Mac at least. And I would think that if they have handed one title of that size out to either one of the studios, they are occupied for that time. So if they want to,
for concurrency, yeah.
If they want to put out another title, they have to get another studio. But that's just me speculating.
Linux Game Awards have announced another project of the month, and it goes to Unvanquished.
Yeah. Have either of you played Unvanquished before?
I've tried a very early alpha, but it didn't work so well for me. I might dabble in it again because it can only work better than Natural Selection 2. There's no two ways about it. So yeah, I guess I will try it out now. It has seen a couple of updates since. And the overall concept is Tremulous, Natural Selection, and now Unvanquished. So you know what you're getting, more or less.
Oh, nice. Well, I've never heard of that project before. I'm sure I'll look at it again. Wow.
Cool. we a couple of us listened into the most recent Guns of Icarus Online dev stream. Most recent, just before we started recording, because of course they had another one start now. And they announced that Guns of Icarus Online is going to become an MLG game.
Wow.
Okay.
And my pace buffer is broken.
MLG is a Major League Gaming, a American-centric esports organization, and that MLG is a professional thing where they actually even put out money for their tournaments.
So this is fairly big news for the Guns of Icarus community. I don't think it's the only Linux title in there, but it's certainly the only title like that I'm aware of.
Why not? It lends itself to competitive gaming, the way it works.
Yeah, I'd love to see people from the Linux community stepping up to get involved in more competitive stuff, but I feel like that's got to wait until they move up to Unity 4.5.2 and start fixing the mouse problems that some Linux users have been having. Like at the moment, it's hard to feel like you can have a real competitive experience when you've got that kind of handicap.
Yes, I know. And I'm looking at all these midweek sessions when I'm awake at that time, and I can't play because my controls are awful still.
The Makers Eden, the developers we've spoken to quite a few times on the cast, plan for release on the 31st of July. Yakko says hi, apparently. That's Rusty Broomhandle that you met before in episode 4 of season 1.
Which is already out on YouTube if you want to recap it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, is Rusty the one with the awesome Welsh accent?
No.
Who was that? Jacob?
That's Del.
Why isn't... She was there, why isn't...
Well, Yakko says hi. Welsh Pixie, I guess, didn't say hi. Damn her.
Damn her.
Well, it was Jaco who let me know that their scheduled release date was the 31st. And he was in here earlier, but now he's left.
He tends to stay for about an hour and then go.
So last year, I think it was last year, Jordan Mechner did a source release of the original Apple II source code for Prince of Persia 1. The very original Prince of Persia, not any of the less exciting games that followed it. And somebody has managed to do a native port of it that runs pretty well. It's currently missing sound, which detracts from the game notably, and doesn't have a lot in the way of scaling options, but other than that, it seems pretty solid, and it's playable at the moment. I would recommend that anybody who is excited by Prince of Persia, check it out. And I have to say that I was surprised to learn that Norbert, who gave me a heads up on this, also runs a Prince of Persia modding community at popot.org, which is it's kind of cool to see. Did we mention the Journey Down, Chapter 2? Yeah, I've been beta testing it, and it's got some rough edges. There's still some placeholder art in there, and some dialogue lines that need recording. But they are steaming ahead towards their just recently announced launch date of the 25th of August, and they've opened up pre-orders. It's a point-and-click adventure in the style of many old point-and-click adventures. So the first one was pretty short, the first episode. The second episode is much longer, and I find that this story and pacing is a bit stronger as well.
Yeah, I guess I will be picking that up while it's still on pre-order, because that price is a bloody steal. If it's actually 2 games for that price, and you say the second one is considerably longer than the first one, it will be worth it.
I don't know whether it's worth considering them separate games, It really does feel like an episodic thing.
Yeah, it is absolutely an episodic thing, and if you, like me, bought The Journey Down on day 1 when it came out, back on the Desura, when Desura was the only Linux game in town...
Yeah, I did, actually.
Yes, I have waited a bit for this.
But I can tell you now, it's worth the wait.
I sure hope so. And I hope there won't be another wait as significant after this if they intend to make another episode and don't conclude the game now.
Yeah, well, given the cliffhanger that this episode ends on, I would be very surprised if we don't see more. And given the fact that it addresses many of the criticisms that the first one received, most notably length, I feel that it's probably going to do at least as well, if not better, and we'll fund further development. So sweet.
So we have one remaining item on the list. We have the Humble Weekly Bundle. It's named Plug-in Digital. That's a little odd, isn't it? But it has 2 Linux games, Finding Teddy and Kill the Bad Guy.
Yes, Humble Weekly Bundle.
There are far too many bundles, which is why we're sort of silently all face-palming at this.
Yeah.
People were speculating about bundle fatigue when everybody else was launching bundles and Humble only had their main bundle pretty much. And people were saying, oh, people will get bundle fatigue, and it hasn't happened.
I've got fatigue.
Until now, where I literally don't care anymore unless there's really a major bundle coming out. They did all of it by themselves.
Sadly, we didn't manage to get anything out of our interview from Feral as to possible future games released, and I was really hoping we could mention this Square Enix bundle, because they've ported quite a few of these titles to Mac, and it would be really interesting to see one of them hit Linux at least. But that's a different bundle, and totally worth it, but mostly Windows games.
But of that weekly sale, I'm kind of interested in Kill the Bad Guy, and talking about bundle fatigue, I think I'd just rather buy that separately from the developer. Maybe donate some money to charity in my own time, This has been SteamLUG Cast, Season 2, Episode 15. You've been listening to myself, Cheese, John.
Goodbye, I'm John.
Derrida.
Goodbye.
And we had Namoda drop in briefly.
Hello. Goodbye.
Thanks again to our special guest, Edwin Smith from Feral Interactive, for joining us and sharing Linux. Hooray!
As ever, you can contact us, cast@steamlug.org. And thanks for listening, everyone.
See ya.
You're welcome.
Really well, and then you completely buggered it up. That was awesome.
I did.
It didn't disappoint.
I think we all did. It's brilliant.
Oh God.
I guess that wraps up the cast, guys. Are you silent because you want to go play games? Sorry, fish and chips just arrived.
Oh, so British. So British.
Bad timing, so.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it out loud.
We can edit that out.
Throw them under the bus.
I meant, how did you find that portion of the cast in general, as opposed to how did you find my ineptitude?
Oh, your ineptitude is charming.
I'm just going to go AFK for like 30 seconds.
Alright. While John sorts himself out, I'm going to admit that I'm disappointed in myself for getting stuck and leaving long periods of silence where I was grinning whilst absorbing things that Edwin was saying.
Sorry about that.
It's a lot more than 30 seconds.
Yes.
Well, I went to get a drink because it's absolutely baking.
It's okay, it's cool.
Sorry about that. How are you for time choose?
Oh, I'm fine. I don't have my meeting until 9 o'clock, so I've got a couple of hours.
Okay.
Surely it's your turn, Derrida.
You use that software. Maybe you should talk about it. I have no idea.
I don't use it. I haven't got it working.
Oh, people, come on. Open broadcast. Open broadcaster software.
And Norbert said that he didn't need us to ask his question anymore.
Okay.
And I'm gonna guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. But typically you guys don't add anything in the way of additional features that aren't in the upstream version of the game. Is that correct?
Yes and no. We don't change any of the major features of the game, but we have been known to change some of the minor stuff. For example, we added gamepad support into BioShock 2 before, when the PC version never had it. Although the PC version's been patched now, so it actually does have gamepad support. But it's little things like that we tend to try and sort of add. It's normally stuff tied around pad support and little things like that. The generic game never gets changed, but it's just those little tiny polished things of, okay, if people on Linux normally do something one way, let's try and tweak the game so it'll support that. Those kind of things.
That was so comprehensive, it should probably have been asked in the real cast when we are live.
You can ask it again. I'm sure I can repeat it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just about every other community question I had or that I came across, was stuff that we were already vaguely planning to talk about, so that's why that list is fairly empty.
Derrida?
Yes.
My god, man, with feeling.
So, yes. This concludes this week's episode, or this 2 weeks episode of the Linux. Oh, we're not. Yeah, SteamLUG Cast. Thank you.